I thought the hardest part of buying a cabin in the Appalachian Mountains would be the paperwork, the inspections, maybe a surprise septic issue. Turns out, no, the hardest part was standing in my own driveway while a woman in pearl earrings told me I was trespassing on my own land. Nothing wakes you up faster than an HOA president trying to evict you before you've even unloaded the dogs. I'd been dreaming about that place for 15 years, through government jobs that burned me out through wildfire seasons, flood cleanups, dead-end meetings, and enough red tape to wrap around the Blue Ridge twice. Whenever life got ugly, I pictured the same thing. A chipped white porch rail, a cold beer sweating in my hand, 2 mutts asleep at my boots, and Lake Holston glinting through the trees like somebody had tucked a little piece into the mountain just for me. Then at 41, after years with the Forest Service, I finally bought it. 12 acres above the lake in western North Carolina, private, legal, off-grid, and most importantly, absolutely not part of any homeowners association. I had checked that point so many times my lawyer started sounding bored every time I brought it up. No HOA, no shared covenant, no architectural committee, no suburban tyrant with a clipboard telling me my mailbox had too much personality. The day Sarah and I moved in felt perfect. Gravel under the tires, dogs panting in the back seat, moving truck groaning behind my Tacoma, the kind of blue sky that makes you think maybe life really can turn a corner. We climbed the last stretch of road, the trees closing in phone signal, vanishing the world, going blessedly quiet. And then I hit the brakes. 3 people were standing at my gate like they were waiting to seize a moonshine shipment. Matching khaki vests, clip-on badges. One guy with a clipboard, one with a plastic sign, and right in the middle of them stood a woman in heels and a blazer, arms crossed like she was about to condemn a man to the gallows. Before I could even get out, she lifted a hand and said, "State your name and purpose, sir." I just stared at her. "My purpose is moving into my house." She took 1 step forward, chin high. "This property was recently voted into the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I'm Karen Pendleton, president and acting enforcement chair. We'll need your compliance paperwork within 72 hours plus design approval for any renovations." Now, there are moments in life so stupid your brain refuses to process them on the first pass. That was one of them. I said very slowly, "No, this parcel is private. It is not part of Whispering Pines. I verified that with the plat, the county clerk, and my attorney." Karen gave this little sniff like facts were a rude smell. That may have been true before, but the neighborhood evolved. The residents voted unanimously. "I'm not one of your residents. That's not how we do things up here." That line right there, that was when the amusement started. Because people who say things like that always think they're speaking from power, when usually they're just saying the quiet part out loud. I opened my glove box and pulled out the deed, the survey, the zoning confirmation, the whole manila envelope of reality. I told her I could show her right there. She raised her hand again and said if I approached the house, it could be interpreted as trespassing until compliance was established. Then, and I swear I'm not embellishing this, she called the sheriff and reported a man attempting to unlawfully occupy an unapproved residence. Sarah leaned out the passenger window and said, "Are you serious right now?" Karen shushed her with one finger. I stood there holding the deed to my own property while this woman tried to manifest a legal system that did not exist, and I remember thinking, this is either going to get resolved in 10 minutes or it's about to become the dumbest war in county history. 20 minutes later, a deputy rolled up in a dusty SUV looking like he'd already had enough of humanity for one day. Karen rushed over to him so fast you'd think she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. She told him I was hostile, non-compliant, possibly armed, and attempting illegal entry. He asked if I was carrying. I told him my firearm was locked, registered, and untouched in the truck. Then I handed him my ID, my deed, my survey, and the county zoning records. Karen muttered, "He fabricated all that." The deputy ignored her and made a call. That should have been enough, but this is where the story took its first real turn. A woman from the neighboring cabin started walking up the hill with a cane and a bait shop hat, moving slow but with the kind of confidence old mountain women have when they know they've seen more nonsense than you'll ever invent. She stopped beside the gate, looked at Karen, and said, "Somebody want to tell me why there's an HOA circus outside that man's property?" Karen's whole face tightened. "Mabel, this is a private matter." Mabel barked out a laugh. "Private matter, my ass. I've lived next to this parcel since Reagan. That land never belonged to Whispering Pines, and it damn sure doesn't now." The deputy asked for her name. She gave it, then added, "And if you need me under oath, I'll bring snacks." I loved her immediately. A second later, the deputy got confirmation from the county parcel, 37F, independent holding non-HOA, No compliance requirement, no jurisdiction. Just like I'd said. He turned to Karen and told her to step back and allow the owner to access his property. Karen looked like a woman swallowing a hornet. We started unloading while the two men in khaki disappeared into the trees, and Karen stood at the road glaring at me like I'd ruined Christmas. Before she left, she shouted, "This isn't over." I carried my first box into the cabin and said, "Then it's a good thing I'm not in your community." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't even close. Sarah had filmed the whole driveway showdown, mostly because she has better instincts than I do when lunacy appears in broad daylight. By that night, the video was all over Facebook, Karen waving her phone around, Mabel jabbing the air with her cane, me standing there like a man wondering if he'd accidentally moved into a satire. It blew up. People loved it. Karen, I'm guessing, did not. 2 days later, I got certified mail from Whispering Pines. Inside was a 5-page notice accusing me of violating HOA rules, illegal structures, and unauthorized overhang, and my personal favorite, a wildlife-themed mailbox that apparently clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. Attached to that letter was a corrected zoning map showing my property inside the HOA boundary dated before I even closed on the place. There was also a record of a so-called community vote complete with signatures claiming I'd been offered a chance to object. That's the moment the amusement ended. I called Laura Green. Now, Laura wasn't just a lawyer. Laura was the kind of woman who could make a corrupt board member sweat through wool. When I sent her the documents, she went dead quiet for a beat, then said, "Trevor, this is either the sloppiest fraud I've seen this year or the boldest." By the next afternoon, she was on my porch with a laptop bag, mirrored sunglasses, and the emotional warmth of a loaded staple gun. We spread maps and records across the table, coffee steaming between us, the lake flickering through the trees, and she started peeling their story apart line by line. Wrong topographic layer. Parcel numbers misaligned. No recorded easement. No annexation authority. No legal path, none for an HOA to absorb my land by neighborhood vote like it was some kind of annexation cosplay. Then Laura found something worse. 3 weeks before I moved in, somebody had submitted a quiet boundary reclassification request through the zoning office under the label of a community utility revision. That meant road access, drainage, fire lane stuff, paperwork designed to slide through if nobody looked too closely. They hadn't reacted to my arrival. They had planned for it. That realization hit different. Because when somebody is rude, you can shrug it off. When somebody is petty, you can laugh. But when people start laying groundwork to take control of your land before you even unpack a coffee mug, that's not pettiness anymore. That's appetite. We filed a cease and desist, a fraud complaint, and document demands. Karen responded the way people like Karen always do when the law stopped sounding decorative. She escalated. County inspectors showed up after anonymous complaints. Notes appeared in my mailbox demanding cooperation. A man in an HOA polo came to my door to conduct an onboarding inspection, and I told him he had 5 seconds to get off my porch before I called the sheriff again. Then came the second twist. A former Whispering Pines board member named Darren Wilcox contacted Laura and asked to talk. He said he'd resigned because Karen had gone off the rails, which turned out to be the politest possible version of the truth. Under oath, Darren told us Karen had been trying to pull remote properties into HOA control for months. She'd used signatures from unrelated neighborhood events to fake support. She'd coordinated with a zoning contact, a county employee named Terry Goss, to create the appearance of lawful boundary adjustments. She called it preemptive governance. That phrase still makes my skin crawl. Then an anonymous envelope landed at Laura's office. Inside were email printouts, Karen, Terry Goss, and Whispering Pines officials openly discussing Parcel 37F absorption strategy. They talked about me by name. They talked about asserting authority during move-in. They talked about using environmental protection as cover. They had planned to make a show of power, confuse me fast, and hope I folded before the paperwork caught up. That was the moment the case stopped being about me. Because once that door opened, other people started talking. Homeowners came forward about fake fines, retaliation, forged notices, harassment over wind chimes, grass height, roof colors, bird feeders, all the tiny suffocating ways weak people use rules to feel enormous. What Karen had built wasn't a neighborhood, it was a little kingdom run on fear and stationery. The hearing was packed. Reporters, locals, deputies leaning against the wall, everybody waiting to see how crazy this thing really was. Darren testified. Then Mabel took the stand and brought photos from the 1980s showing the parcel boundaries clear as day. Finally, Laura introduced the emails. She read the subject line Parcel 37F absorption strategy and the whole room went still. Karen got up to defend herself, and honestly, Laura barely had to touch her after that. Karen just kept talking about community integrity, about preserving the ridge, about stopping people like me from damaging the character of the area. Then she said the fatal thing out loud, under oath in front of God, and everybody that if they hadn't acted, first people like me would have ruined the mountain. Laura stood up and said, "Your Honor, let the record reflect that the defendant has admitted she knowingly acted outside legal authority to seize control of private land." The injunction was granted on the spot. The next morning, Karen was arrested. I wish I could tell you I felt triumphant in some big cinematic way, fist pump music swelling sunrise over the lake. Truth is, what I mostly felt was relief. Relief so deep it made me tired. Relief that the thing I knew was true had finally been made official. Relief that the law, slow and awkward and frustrating as it can be, still had teeth when somebody was willing to bite back. After that, the whole Whispering Pines machine started collapsing. County investigators found years of misconduct. More owners joined lawsuits. The board resigned. The HOA lost authority, pending reformation, then was effectively dissolved. The sign at the entrance came down. Somebody replaced it with a hand-painted banner that read, "Private property is not a democracy." I didn't put it there. I also didn't remove it. Our civil case settled for $1.3 million. Karen was indicted. Her zoning buddy got put under investigation. And for the first time since we'd arrived, the mountain went quiet, really quiet. No clipboards, no notes in the mailbox, no headlights creeping past the tree line, just wind through the branches, dogs snoring on the porch, Sarah making pancakes that somehow always smelled like too much vanilla, and that old sense of peace I'd spent 15 years chasing. I learned something up there, and it wasn't complicated, just uncomfortable. Most people think power looks like money titles. Government seals fancy language on official paper. A lot of the time it doesn't. A lot of the time, power is just confidence plus other people's hesitation. It's someone betting you won't question them fast enough. It's a bully in business, casual, hoping the performance works before the facts show up. And the ugly truth is, sometimes that performance works. Sometimes people lose land money, sleep years of their lives because they're too exhausted or too polite to fight. That part stuck with me. Kindness matters. Community matters. Rules can matter too. But the second rules stop protecting people and start feeding somebody's ego. They become weapons. And if you don't push back even calmly, even legally, even with shaking hands, those people don't stop. They expand. The last time I saw Karen, she was being led out of the courthouse in cuffs, jaw tight, eyes burning, like she still thought she was the victim in all this. I didn't gloat. I just gave her a small nod, final, nothing more. Then I went home, walked my fence line with the dogs, and stood by the sign Sarah had carved after the whole thing blew over. Private land. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Not poetic, but man, it felt right. So here's the question I keep coming back to. When does community enforcement become plain old abuse, and how far would you go to stop someone from stealing control of something that's yours? Tell me what you think in the comments. Who was right? Who crossed the line? And have you ever dealt with a Karen and HOA or anybody else who thought rules made them king?